Hello, everybody. So today I'm going to showcase my project, which is about the 46 U.S. presidents. So, like I said, there are 46 U.S. presidents, and all of them have done each specific thing. So here we go. George Washington was the first president of the United States. He fought the American Revolution and was president from 1789 to 1797. He also made the act that the U.S. should not get into any European affairs at all. John Adams is the second president of the United States. His term was from 1797 to 1801, and him and George Washington were both from the Federalist Party. John Adams is extremely controversial as he passed the Alien Sedition Acts, which allow people who are immigrants out of the country, and no one can say anything bad about the government. Thomas Jefferson was the third president of the United States. His term was from 1801 to 1809, and he was a Democratic Republican and political party. Jefferson is really known for buying the massive land of Louisiana from the French, also called the Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of the nation. James Madison, the fourth president, was a president from 1809 to 1817, and he was a Democratic Republican. James Monroe was also a Democratic Republican. His term was from 1817 to 1825 as a Democratic Republican fifth president. Then came John Quincy Adams, the sixth president, Federalist. He won the election of 1825 really controversially. Then comes Andrew Jackson, one of the most controversial presidents ever, and won the election of 1829. And then Martin Van Buren was a president from 1837 to 1841. The economy crashes during his presidency. William Henry Harrison was the ninth president of the United States and died just 44 days in office. He was one of the oldest to be president in 68, which probably resulted to his death. After Henry Harrison came John Tyler, his vice president. But John Tyler was mainly ineffective, and later he joined the Confederate Army, which didn't work out for him. The first mention of Manifest Destiny came in James K. Polk's presidency, and he was the 11th president. Zachary Taylor was a war hero, and he became the 12th president of the United States. Millard Fillmore is one of the most ineffective presidents. He was the 13th. Then comes Franklin Pierce. He was the 14th president, and sources say that he was one of the drunkest presidents ever. James Buchanan is the 15th president, but he's also really bad because he did nothing when the Civil War was raging on. Abraham Lincoln is the best president as he stopped the Civil War, and that was a really tall task to do. Andrew Johnson is also one of the worst presidents as he was the first one to get impeached after violating laws. Ulysses S. Grant was the 18th president of the United States, and he was a war hero and did an average job. Rutherford B. Hayes was the 19th president, and he is one of the most forgotten presidents. The only reason James A. Garfield is remembered as the 20th president because he was the second president ever to be assassinated. And Chester Alan Arthur is also one of the most forgotten presidents, but he did a good job of taking up James Garfield's role. Grover Cleveland was the 22nd president of the United States, but then he lost the election to this guy, Benjamin Harrison, and he is related to William Henry Harrison. And then Harrison lost to Grover Cleveland, who is the 22nd and the 24th president of the United States, which is a big shocker. Then William McKinley was the third president to be assassinated. He was the 25th, and a lot of presidents assassinated during this time. Wow. Then Theodore Roosevelt, the youngest president ever, he was 42 years old. He took place over McKinley, and he was really good. William Howard Taft, the 27th president of the United States, is the only president ever to be part of the Supreme Court, and then later to become president in the future. Then comes Woodrow Wilson, who was the 28th president of the United States. He got a Nobel Prize for creating the League of Nations. Then came Warren G. Harding. He was the 29th president, died during his office, mainly ineffective. Then came Calvin Coolidge. He signed a bunch of acts. He was a decent president and signed the Immigration Act, which reduced immigration in all forms. Then came Herbert C. Hoover. He was a decent president, but the Great Depression kind of spoiled his reputation. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was extremely significant as he was the only president to have 4 terms and got over the Great Depression that Herbert Hoover left his presidency on. After Roosevelt, on his 4th term, he got ill and died, so Truman took over, got the atomic bomb, dropped it in Hiroshima, Japan, and killed thousands of people, but Japan surrendered. And then you got Dwight Eisenhower, who had the Little Rock Nine. He was associated with them, gave them protection, and it was because of Little Rock's segregation were escalating, and there's a lot of death threats in that specific area. John F. Kennedy was a famous president, and he was the youngest president to be elected. He was 43, and that is really young, as opposed to the oldest, which is right now 78. And after that, Lyndon B. Johnson came over and took over, and he led up a stable presidential term. Then Nixon came, and Nixon, he won the Electoral College and got 520 electoral votes, one of the most ever in history, but resigned because of a Watergate scandal. And next is Gerald Ford. And the only reason he was president because of Nixon resigning and the vice president resigning. So Ford was the minority leader. So Nixon chose Ford to be the president, and he became the president of the United States, even though he was not even the vice president. And that is the only time that has ever happened. Next comes Jimmy Carter. And he is, people kind of call him good, but also there was an economy crash. Employment rate dropped 7%. So that was that was a way that Jimmy Carter really kind of affected the economy in a bad way. Ronald Reagan was the 40th president of the United States, and he was one of the best. Look at these electoral maps. He beat Carter 49 to 489. That's expressive. What's even more impressive, he beat Mondale 513 to 13. He only won Minnesota and D.C. That's just sad. Then comes George H.W. Bush. And the only thing he got involved was the war in Iraq. So then Bill Clinton, he was the second president to be impeached after Andrew Johnson in 1868. Then George W. Bush, the president in 9/11. So, yeah, he might seem familiar. Then Barack Obama, the first African-American president, so he was the 44th president. Then comes Donald Trump, 45th president. Also another controversial president like Andrew Jackson. And he's the only president to be impeached twice. Then comes the last president, also the oldest president, the 46th president, Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, coronavirus, he got Taliban takeover, and then you got Israel-Palestine. So a lot to deal with in his first 6 months in office. So, yeah. Hopefully you liked the video and you actually learned something about presidents like you probably didn't know. And hope you remember that I'm the guy who likes U.S. history, and that's what you can remember me about.